While the squad could be taking in new members next year, the group of left-wing lawmakers elected Congress back in 2018 is expected to expand after a number of progressive candidates pulled out wins in last week's elections. The incoming members could add power to the push for policies like the Green New Deal and Medicare for All. Charles Payne is the host of Making Money on the Fox Business Network. Charles, always good to see you. When you see the progressive wing of the party expanding like it is, and you hear more chatter about the Green New Deal, Medicare for All, what do you think financially is the fallout here?
Well, financially, the fallout is going to be absolutely devastating. And, we're talking about a lot of lost jobs, a lot of lost prestige for America. Certainly, we will no longer be the preeminent nation in the world. But I think that's part of the plan. I don't think they want us to be the preeminent nation in the world. And, already, let's face it, they carry a lot more weight than their actual numbers. But they have power. They've been able to remove people who have been sitting in Congress for a very long time. They did it again this election. They did it in the midterms. And, of course, how AOC shocked the world when she was elected. Anyone who dismisses or tries to downplay the influence they already wield, they're not being honest. Even Nancy Pelosi, at this very moment, she won't denounce socialism. So, and Trace, I come on and I talk about the economic damage, but I'm also concerned about the civil damage. We have one congressman, Jamal Bowman, New York. He wants a National Truth and Reconciliation Commission to look into racism and the role of America. And I'm worried about, will they specifically target the role of individuals? Will they go down their family tree? We're knocking down statues. We're renaming streets. We're going to eventually rename cities, maybe towns,
do it in the next 4 years, it's all over, really.
The line is drawn because you have Cori
running
Bush.
Out of time.
She's going to be representing Missouri. She not only wants to defend the police, she wants to defund the police and defund the military and open the borders. Are you nuts? Yeah. I mean, we're essentially saying, give away the country. Now, here's the thing. You got to give the Greeks credit. They hid inside the Trojan horse. These folks are riding on top of it. They're making it clear what their agenda is, and we're not.
I hate when people use stupid analogies like that. They're not even freaking clever or funny or anything.
You mentioned Congresswoman-elect Cori Bush from Missouri. I want to put her tweet on the screen. This is from a couple of weeks ago. Where
hey,
she
I like
said,
trolls.
Here,
Trolls will love me.
If you're having a bad day,
I get so many good compliments from them.
Social services we're going to fund after we defund the Pentagon. Look, Charles, we know that nobody's going to defund the Pentagon.
Oh, this is scary. How dare they fund social services?
Several years ago, nobody dreamed
not social
of some
services.
of these far-left proposals would be gaining as much traction as they are. So it starts out as kind of this whimsical comment, and all of a sudden, a few years down the road, it becomes more realistic.
Oh, they hack. No, I don't want that.
The seeds have been planted for these things for a long time, and they water them, and they do. I'm watching this series on TV, a Showtime series, and you can see the innuendos, and they don't come out and say it, but they plant it in movies, commercials, TV, books, what we can read, what we can't read. It's a long-term goal of theirs, but as they get within striking distance, they let it be known. This is what we want. Nikita Khrushchev warned. He did. The Soviet president back then, that they would win America without firing a shot. This is the kind of thing he's talking about. It's never gone away. It's picked up enormous power over the years.
On behalf of the
and
Soviet
irony,
Union.
of course, is people who should know better are actually fanning the flames. So, no military, no borders, no police. It's nuts.
No military, no borders, no police.
Yep,
that's the platform.
Saying, look, the whole defund the police movement really hurt some of these Democratic candidates. But if you listen to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I don't think there's a belief in that. She tweeted the following,
I can't believe AOC works for the Soviet Union.
Democrat incumbents who co-sponsored the Green New Deal, Medicare for All, etc. And if I'm not mistaken, every single one won re-election. So she's saying the movement is growing. Don't knock it down because it's growing. Your last thoughts on this, Charles?
Yeah, I mean, she's absolutely right. The movement is growing, and that's why I'm glad we're doing this segment. But on the other hand, you have seasoned politicians like a Representative Clyburn who says this might have cost, a couple of candidates that they poured hundreds of millions of dollars into their campaign the chance to win and to really get true power. So the Democrats, there's some folks who've been around long enough to know that this is wrong.
Okay. Democrats been there long enough to know this is wrong. Yep, Clyburn is a genius, basically. So I don't know if you guys saw what's happening in Florida. But in Florida right now, Their governor wants to crack down on protests and expand stand your ground laws. He also wants to offer immunity to drivers who claim to have unintentionally killed or injured protesters who block traffic and withhold state funds from local governments that cut law enforcement budgets. So if you want to help your community instead of over beefing up your police department, screw you. You're terrible. There's going to be a withholding of state funds at that point. So this is called the anti-mob legislation. It would expand the stand your ground law. And apparently, we all know what happens as a result of this. But apparently they're like, oh, if there's people protesting and rioting, you could shoot them. If, say you're standing in front of your house and someone throws a bottle at the house across from yours, you now have, under this bill or whatever, this legislation, you now have the right to shoot them for not, because stand your ground is your own property. But now you have, you could shoot them, basically. And we all know how it's going to be used. Anybody seeing someone protest in a way they don't like, they're going to shoot them, these crazy right-wingers, and they're going to say, oh, wait, I was just stopping a riot and defending my property. But, Tim Pool did a segment on this, so I thought I'd check this out really quick.
What is going on in Florida? Florida's DeSantis moves to allow citizens to shoot looters, rioters targeting businesses. Okay. Stand your ground, I get.
And you just give it an okay, okay. Oh, yeah, queen, hype you up. I'm going to hype you up. Jesus,
I don't
dude.
completely disagree. Actually, I probably lean more towards agreeing, and I'll tell you why. You don't know if someone's prepared to use lethal force against you, but if they're breaking the law and entering your property, you need to protect yourself.
Stand your ground laws already cover that. This isn't even an argument. He's talking about expanding stand your ground laws.
I think it's really weird we have these states where they're like, you have a duty to retreat from your own home, and they exist. Isn't that nuts? Where am I supposed to go? I'm in my house, somebody broke in, I got to defend myself.
You should know about this. You're all for this.
You have a duty to retreat to the middle of the woods.
Does Tim Pool not know what stand your ground laws already do? Does he not understand what the governor is talking about?
Same applies for businesses. If I'm in my business and someone's breaking in, where am I supposed to go?
That's a stand your ground law, you dumbass. If you were in someone else's property,
shit. I could understand. Go to your property. But anyway, I wonder if this has something to do with upcoming results of an election in Florida, where there may be riots. Perhaps not. Let's read the story. They say, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has drafted anti-mob legislation that would expand the state's stand your ground law.
It could be used the other way around, but we all know, typically we all know where the courts are going to lie, and we all know where the different stories are going to come from the law enforcement and stuff that are actually dealing with the cases.
That some worry would allow armed citizens to shoot and potentially kill anyone they suspect of looting.
Anyone they suspect of looting. Do you know how many people, remember Ahmaud Arbery jogging through the neighborhood? People thought he did something wrong because he's black. Do you know how much bias is going to play into this? If you see a black guy walking and you're like, oh, he's about to loot something, you could just shoot him with the wording here.
New legislation comes in response to months of protesting that frequently lead to rioting this summer in Florida and across the U.S. following the death of George Floyd. The legislation is an attempt to prevent violent and disorderly assemblies by permitting violence against anyone involved in the interruption or impairment of a business reportedly described in the draft as being a burglary within 500 feet of a violent or disorderly assembly.
Within 500 feet? Holy shit.
According to reporting by the Miami Herald Tuesday. I guess that means if y'all are walking down the street and you see someone looting a store, you can go, pop. That's crazy.
But he's all for this. This is actually insane.
It allows for vigilantes to justify their actions. A former Miami-Dade County prosecutor, Denise Georges, who has worked with the Stand Your Ground cases, told the Miami publication. It also allows for death to be the punishment for a property crime, and that is cruel and unusual punishment. We cannot live in a lawless society where taking a life is done so casually and recklessly. It's an interesting way to phrase it, but I don't agree that it's cruel and unusual.
I don't agree that it's cruel and unusual to shoot somebody if they're within 500 feet of your business and you suspect them of looting. It's not even your own business. If they're walking through the neighborhood and you're like, oh, that guy's looting, you can shoot him. Yeah, Tim Pool. Oh, Tim Pool's on the left, right? Whenever I say Tim Pool's on the right, people are like, no, Tim Pool is a lefty that left the left because he, the identity politics. Bullshit. Oh, yeah, thanks, guys, for coming.
Excessive. I oppose it for sure. Well, let me clarify. If somebody is running away with a TV, don't let them take the TV.
Thanks, HG.
But If someone is breaking into your property or threatening your life in some way, that I understand. So maybe I was wrong.
He's not even approaching this in the reality he's presenting to himself.
I don't agree with the full premise.
Does he know
of
what he's talking about?
You shouldn't loot. You shouldn't riot. But what do we do to stop the looting and the rioting? And maybe that's the real goal here. But I don't like the idea that you could be like, well, I was allowed to do it because he was stealing a small piece of, some kind of, some item or such. People shouldn't die for this stuff, man. They say the draft legislation also includes measures that would make protesting which disrupts the public by blocking traffic a third-degree felony.
A third-degree
felony. The law would also reportedly grant immunity.
What about okay, so this is also for the Trump supporters who were blocking the road to like Manhattan.
To drivers who unintentionally kill or injure protesters who are blocking traffic. Additionally, the law would allow the state to withhold funds from local governments that cut police budgets. DeSantis, an ardent supporter of President Trump, who won in Florida by just over 3 points, reportedly submitted copies of the legislation to the state Senate Committee on Criminal Justice and the House Judiciary Committee.
I have a friend that is Norris Pagan. So Tim Pool is basically saying, you know what, this kind of sucks, but, it should happen. If someone dies because they're walking in the wrong neighborhood and they look at a house and someone suspects them of looting, they have to get shot. I mean, how else are we going to stop the riots that we are over-amplifying and sensationalizing that aren't actually, when they say entire cities are being burnt down, but it's actually a couple buildings within like one small area.
According to emails obtained by the Miami Herald. It's clear that the Trump beauty pageant is still going on with governors and senators who all want to be the next Trump. Miami Beach Mayor Dan Gelber
that's a good point.
told the publication.
Whoever wrote
and
this.
the governor is very clearly a very good contestant.
Whoever that quote was from.
Gelber, a former federal prosecutor, was also a critic of the Stand Your Ground law when it first passed in 2005. DeSantis could not be immediately reached by Fox News.
So how far can this go? So if all of these governors, all of these senators, all of these, House members, maybe even local government members, if all these people are competing to be the next Trump, how far will they go? Who's going to draft the legislation to deport everybody else other than white Christians that have blue eyes? Who's going to get that far?
For comment. Well, I tell you what.
The Trump beauty pageant.
I don't like it when people die. I don't like it when people get hurt, and I wish it didn't have to happen.
But
I don't know what to tell you if someone's attacking you and you stand your ground. If someone breaks into your house.
That's not what the law is, you dumbass.
And you're trying to defend yourself. You stand your ground.
That's already a law.
Back in the day, people used to die all the time.
Okay, maybe he's not a grifter. Maybe he's not a grifter. Maybe he is just stupid. Because this is really dumb.
I don't know what to tell you if someone's attacking you and you stand your ground. If someone breaks into your house and you're trying to defend yourself, you stand your ground. What do? Back in the day, people used to die all the time. Isn't that weird? Like, seriously, people would just be dead and you'd probably never hear from them again.
What?
I remember I was at Glenn Beck's studio and he had this newspaper on the wall, really old newspaper from the 1800s. And I was reading one where it was like a guy was standing outside a bar, a dude ran out, put a gun to his chest and pulled the trigger and ran off. It's like, that's crazy. Why did that happen? But people would just die. Like, dude took a blast in the heart. I don't know if this is the right move. Shooting looters, targeting businesses. There's got to be some restraint, but the challenge is, I guess, there's no easy middle ground. You want to stop looters and rioters.
There's no easy
middle ground. You don't want them
to
die. I don't know what the answer is. If you constrain people and say they have no recourse, then the looters and rioters are emboldened. Maybe the goal with this is to say, if you loot, you will die, and then maybe people won't. I don't know. I wouldn't call it cruel and unusual.
Yeah,
but I know
you know what? As somebody who advocates for freedom, Tim Pool, the standard that if you break a law, you die is a very, that's a very common policy in libertarian countries, in very free countries. It's very typical for what does he call himself? A classical, liberal, freedom-loving guy who is more fiscally right or whatever. Like, okay.
Know that I don't want to kill anybody. If I saw someone like running out of my house with a TV, and I got criticized by conservatives for saying this, I'm not going to shoot the guy. That's ridiculous. I lost my TV. That's messed up. This dude, what's he doing? But I've had people tell me like, nope. There was like a saying or something. Look, I don't know exactly why he's bringing this about now. There's been similar conversations about laws in Florida that would do something similar. Like if you're pulling up your car and there's a protest around you, you can run them over if they're blocking traffic. This is something different. This makes it illegal.
Look how casual that is for him. If you see a protester and he's blocking traffic, you could just like knock him over,
And maybe excessive. I don't know though, man. The challenge is always a balance between freedom and security. And what this law says is that you can defend yourself and others, which is
That's
kind
not what
of
the
not
law
necessarily
says.
a security thing.
This is a law.
It's
Okay,
not
so there's different types of like defense. There's like where you take the forward motion and when you take like the when you're withdrawing motion or whatever. So like if you see somebody and you suspect them of doing something, then it's much different than if somebody is actively breaking in your house. This is just encouraging vigilant action of people that are just going to go shoot black protesters. That's all this is.
telling the government they have more power to stop people. It's telling the individuals they do.
Yeah, it's saying you could defend any property that you suspect is being broken into, not only your own. It's extending stand your ground laws. This is like the Kyle Rittenhouse thing. So he was in a different town, defending other people's businesses. So this would probably help him a lot, since it's like 500 feet within your home, I guess, or within your property, or is it 500 feet within your vicinity?
I don't know though. I don't like the idea of shooting people who are stealing stuff. You know what I mean? Within reason, of course.
So he's against it?
Like if you were
Within
stealing
reason?
someone's like insulin, I guess. Like they could die.
Insulin?
You know what I mean?
What?
But check this out. I wonder if this is why this is coming about. John Voight says fighting Biden.
I've always wanted to work in sound.
Me too. You can defend your property, but you can't defend someone else's and claim immunity if you murder somebody. Yeah. That's what they want. Oh shit.
Biden won is, quote, greatest fight since the Civil War. Ah, he said it. Now you got me saying it. Now they're going to get mad at me saying Tim's talking about Civil War again. No, but it happens. They're talking about it. Is there a real concern that we're going to see widespread rioting and looting? Perhaps.
Cool.
Perhaps. I just covered in my previous segment. 3 Supreme Court justices helped George W. Bush win his case in 2000, and now they're on the Supreme Court. Not that I think Chief Justice Roberts has any loyalty to the Republican Party or Donald Trump, but Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh, they're there.
Yeah, if there's a riot within 500 feet. But what is considered to be a riot? So if somebody is, breaking glass at a local auto zone, can you just walk up and just fire off at them? Just kill them one by one? If somebody's walking near an auto zone and they throw a plastic bottle at the auto zone, can you just walk up and shoot them because they're rioting or whatever? The way it's worded, they said any disturbance to the normal activity of the business or any disturbance to the defense of the business. So where is that line drawn? Like, that is insane.
And they were also on the court. So I wonder if we are being lined up for some kind of Trump electoral victory, which results in mass widespread chaos.
Oh, that would be fun.
Maybe the case. And I don't think
that is possible, by the way. Faithless electors can still swing different states, technically. Who knows if it'll happen? I mean, this could be crazy if Donald Trump pushes far enough. But as far as I know, judges at different levels are denying Trump cases all over the board. So that's a good sign.
Want that, but it doesn't matter. The lines are drawn. There's nothing you can say or do. If this happens, it happens, and people are going to go nuts. And it's going to get scary. It will. I don't know if it'll be violence or the greatest fight since the Civil War, but some people certainly think so. John Voight.
Like, I'm not saying there's going to be a civil war. I'm just saying, like the video I watched yesterday, I'm just saying you better prep for the apocalypse. I'm not saying there's going to be a civil war, though.
Thinks it's so. They say. Actor John Voight released a video Tuesday attacking the results of the presidential election and Joe Biden, saying the U.S. is now entering the greatest fight since the Civil War. I wonder what fight that would be called. I don't know, the Boogaloo or something. The Academy Award winner and longtime Trump supporter took to Twitter to condemn what he alleged was a rigged White House race, calling the aftermath a battle of righteousness versus Satan. In the almost 2-minute video posted with the caption,
Satan,
we all know the truth.
I love the religious shit.
Voight said he's disgusted with the lie that Biden is president-elect and claimed there will be a price to pay for those who are trying to deceive the American public. We must fight this corruption that has taken over and fight for the good that seems lost. Let us give our trust to God and fight now for Trump's victory, because we all know that this ballot count is corruption.
Whenever God gets involved, God has assured a path to victory for Donald Trump, and if God does not win, it is the act of the devil.
So let us not back down. Let us fight this fight as if it is our last fight on earth. President Trump has refused to concede this.
I was on David Pakman
Voight has
today.
referred to Trump as one of our nation's greatest presidents. Trump previously awarded Voight the National Media of Arts for his contribution to American culture. Civil war. I don't know if there's going to be a civil war. Maybe we're already in it. Trump is certainly
He did it again. I don't know if there's going to be a civil war. Maybe we're already in it.
Challenging our institutional norms. Usually, when the media says someone won, the other person just concedes like Hillary Clinton did. This time around, Trump saying, no, that's not how it works. It goes to certification, the Electoral College. Of course,
You can
Joe
be a stupid
Biden
grifter.
is
You
adamant
can.
that he won as well, and I don't know what's going to happen. Perhaps we will see the results in favor of Trump. They say Trump wants to overturn the results, but the results aren't in. Nothing's certified yet. Maybe by tomorrow or the next day we might start to get some real results. But Trump is saying by next week we'll see it. I think there
was some news on like. This is an election official from New York, or not New York, Philadelphia.
It's
He's
one
a
of these
Republican.
things that kind of bounces around out there, that echoes around, that people say from one to another. They heard something, or they heard from someone who saw something that they think
David
might have
Packman's channel
been
today.
X, Y, or Z. And it's really impossible to keep up with those.
Oops. I gotta find out how to work this website. Okay, where is my David Rubin clip? Where is he at? Here you go. So Mr. David Rubin, the ultra intellectual, hyper intelligent man, the grifter, the guy who went from the far left to the far right within like a couple years and saw his net worth go up from like $50,000 to, I think he just bought a $4 million house in Hollywood or something like that, or just Beverly Hills or something of the sort.
House Majority Whip Jim Clyburn is blaming some Democratic election losses on defunding the police movement.
We keep making that mistake, this foolishness about you got to be this progressive or that progressive. That phrase, defund the police, cost Jamie Harrison tremendously. Sloganeering kills people.
Jamie Harrison, didn't he lose by like 20%?
Sloganeering destroys movements. Stop sloganeering.
If you live in a racist-ass state like that, you're not going to win.
Is the host of the Rubin Report.
Defund the police or not.
Don't burn
That's
this
his
book.
example.
Think for yourself in an age of unreason. Dave Rubin. Dave, now he says it. All he had to do was stand up to Kamala Harris, who is for defunding the police in Los Angeles.
God.
They took millions out, as well as $1 billion out of the police budget in the NYPD, and millions out of Minneapolis. Now he speaks up.
Minneapolis actually voted as a community to adopt a community policing framework, and apparently it's doing a lot better than their old design did. People in the community are actually choosing the officers and holding officers accountable instead of law enforcement just being hired internally and all that. It's been working pretty well so far.
This is so typical of what has happened with the left and the sort of internal war between the progressives and whatever is left of a moderate Democrat. And I'm not really sure how much is left, although Clyburn's sort of taking the mantle right there.
Yeah, the Democrats use the bold strategy of denying all of their activists.
I mean, look, in effect, nobody except the radicals that want violence on the streets and that want mayhem.
Nobody wants violence on the street or wants mayhem. Literally 97% of the protests were completely peaceful. That means not even one bottle thrown.
Nobody besides that wants the police to be defunded.
Literally everybody, all the families of the black men that get shot by the cops, they literally say we do not want violence here. It's not reflective of our values or our child.
Even in places, in black communities where crime is high, they want more policing. I mean, there's a lot of evidence of this.
They still want better policing and better police reform. Even people who say abolish the police, which is like 0.01% of people, even those people usually want to rebuild it in some type of other and better manner, which is like community-based. Even people saying abolish, even the most radical side doesn't say there should be. I mean, the most radical says there shouldn't be any law enforcement or anything of the sort, but
you want less policing if you want chaos, and I think the progressives in many cases, they do want that chaos because they then think that proves that somehow the state is racist.
Literally, fascism grows off of chaos when it comes to the police state because they use it as an excuse to crack down even more.
And that
these are such stupid points.
That in essence is what allows them to run around and say America is so terrible. Look at all of this. But the average person wants law and order.
They talk about
that's
systemic
just very
issues,
simple. and easily understood by everybody.
Yeah, I mean, if there's modernization of policing that could help things get better, everybody wants to do it. Provide the money for that. Extend time in the academy, whatever the cops say and whatever the experts reveal. By the way, in New York, front page, 2,400 people, officers have said, I quit. That's a 25% increase of all of last year, where so it is a run for the exits because they get no support from this terrible mayor. And if they were so bad, why didn't Jim Clyburn say this earlier? It would have meant a lot for the country. Meanwhile, yesterday, you would never know it, but the Judiciary Chairman, Lindsey Graham, asked Andy McCabe to come in and explain himself to what he was up to during the Russia probe in the 2016 election. Here's a little of what he gave and what he received.
And by the way, the reason people on the left don't like the term law and order is because law and order has always meant, since the 70s, the war on drugs was a reaction to the civil rights movement. It was the new racial caste system. So it went from slavery to segregation, Jim Crow, and then once they couldn't explicitly, through law, limit the rights of black people, Nixon signed in the law, the whole law and order thing, the war on drugs, and that's how he kept black people down then. So the term law and order, by nature has a racist
If you knew then what you know now, would you have signed the warrant application in June of 2017 against Carter Page?
No, sir.
Did you mislead the FISA court?
I signed a package that included numerous factual errors.
General Flynn's been prosecuted for lying to the FBI. You lied to the FBI, and you aren't being prosecuted.
General Flynn's situation and mine have absolutely nothing in common.
I don't know about this guy. I don't know who he is.
Intentionally misled the FBI.
You were fired for lying, were you not?
I was fired as the result of a deeply unfair and flawed IG investigation.
Unfair and flawed, which he referred to, that said that there was a reason for the investigation. What do you think?
I mean, McCabe got mauled yesterday. What you guys didn't show there was Ted Cruz absolutely grilling him about the Logan Act. And in essence, this sort of reminds me of some of the hearings we've had on big tech and social media where, the Senate brings people in, they grill them about things, but what are you going to actually do? So I'm sort of over the theatrics of this kind of stuff. Well, what are we going to actually do? Are we going to actually start arresting people? Are there going to be consequences, or are we going to just do the theater version of this? Because in essence, McCabe really screwed up here. And are we just going to talk about it, or does something actually happen?
And Dave, the other thing is they're all not telling the truth. At different times, they deny not knowing different things, so their stories don't intersect at all. And let's.
Yeah, ever since policing started, it has always been a tool of landowners and, the slave patrols, like you just said. And, through only caring about landowners, of course, we know who did not own land throughout history, especially in America. Oh, boy.
Let's just take a look.
In America, police are trained less than in other countries. They are less equipped to handle high-stress scenarios. We have worse socioeconomic conditions in America, worse economic inequality. We have so many things that lead to a higher crime rate. Like things like legalizing marijuana and fixing poverty. It's not even a lefty thing at this point. Like, if police want to be safer, if you want police to be safer, you should be for things like income for lower classes, funding for low-income education and all that stuff. Whatever job programs or whatever you want to do, reparations of some sort. That's a policing issue as well.
Look right now about how much.
Hey, Ted Cruz. Someone said Ted Cruz. He was on. Ted Cruz was on Louder with Crowder.
Obviously, the most important thing is Mug Club because it's what allows us to continue. But that is a good question. And as far as I know right now, do we have Senator?
We do.
We do have Senator Ted. Senator Ted, his podcast, I should say, in case you guys need some other information on it.
Yeah.
People are like, who? If I say his podcast is Verdict, where you can download whatever podcast, or people go, oh, Senator Ted Cruz.
Of course.
No, they already know it's Senator Ted Cruz.
What is he wearing? Are those pajamas?
Cruiserine, the Wolver Cruz. This guy, I will say, has absolutely been on this like a dog on a bone, and I highly recommend that you do pay attention to his podcast. Yeah. Senator Ted Cruz, can you hear me, sir?
I can, Stephen. Good to be with you.
I am glad to have you on the show as well. You know, something just remarkable just happened live while we were broadcasting. CNN was saying there's no evidence whatsoever of any kind of voter fraud or irregularities. I think the two have been conflated.
Not.
And, of course, the Georgia Secretary of State just said they're going to do a manual recount. That was not aired on CNN at any point.
They're within the recount margin, though. They're within 0.5 percentage points.
This is really concerning to us. We've obviously been covering it. What is the path here? What is the strategy with specific Senator Ted Cruz? Because something needs to happen quickly for Americans to not lose faith.
Yeah, look, you're exactly right. I'm sure the CNN story was amplifying the New York Times headline today, banner headline that no voter fraud anywhere in America. And,
right.
And the basis for this is they called all the election officials, which in these blue states, many of them are hard partisan Democrats, and said, hey, did you guys steal the election? And they responded, no, we didn't steal the election.
They went straight to election officials and people working the polls and said, are there any irregularities or any examples of fraud? And they said no. And Ted Cruz, not Tim Cruz. You know, Tim Cruz is Tim Pool mixed with Ted Cruz, but Ted Cruz is like, haha, how dare they ask the people actually working the polls? They're all Democratic sycophants. And by the way, this guy from Philadelphia is a Republican. There's tons of Republicans in these rooms. They're very involved. This is one of the most closely looked at elections of all time. The idea that fraud would be in this election is insane. And, of course, they're calling all the Republicans who are saying, hey, there's no fraud. They're saying they're rhinos, Republicans in name only.
This is a legal process. Don't get too wonky for us, Senator Cruz.
Why are they laughing? He didn't say anything
bizarre.
funny.
It's like, we called all the bank robbers and they promised us there are no bank robberies in America. Like,
right.
Okay, so the election officials are the ones stealing the election now, not the Democrats who are like on Biden's campaign. It's the election officials that have probably been doing this for like 15 years, most of them, 15, 20 years, and they take their jobs very seriously. Most Americans, like 99% of Americans, trust their local election officials. People know these people within their communities. And Ted Cruz is like, that's like asking the bank robber
if there is fraud and you're asking the people who are running it, they're going to tell you there's not.
Right.
This is not subtle reporting. But you know what? The New York Times knows that. They want to write that headline.
Well, let me ask you.
They know if you look for actual evidence and you don't find it, then you're wrong.
Yes, because they keep saying there's no evidence of fraud. And I think we understand there's a difference between fraud and irregularity. So coming up to
there's no
the
evidence
election,
again.
we document this. We had a tallying. We had kind of a total tally.
The latter, Brand will fix.
Right. Yes. Well, wait, what was that? I didn't hear what you said. Who will fix?
The latter, irregularities.
Yes.
Regular brand will fix.
Oh, and I stepped on your joke, and it was a poop joke, which is wonderful.
Oh, man.
Don't eat.
I know my host.
Yes, absolutely. It's a crappy show, but we love having you on. So they say no, because we were always very clear there were up to 2.7 million ballots that we said could be compromised. And we said there's a difference between ineptitude, the post office not being effective enough to get these votes in time, as well as voter rolls that weren't accurate, as well as people who maybe received double registrations. We were very clear in saying that. The media just keeps saying no hard evidence of voter fraud. So
literally, the people who work in the White House, Kelly McKinney or whatever, has come out and used Project Veritas stories to back up her claims. They aren't talking about actual issues with ballots. They're saying that people got ballots that were dated after the election, and they re-stamped them to make it look like they were viable to be counted, and that, they postmarked them for a date before the election. And they're saying because there weren't enough election inspectors or observers in the room, therefore every ballot counted during that time is illegal and shouldn't be counted into the total count. Those voters should be disenfranchised, although we know there's Republican and Democratic officials in each room. And again, they didn't come out with all this shit until they realized they were losing, and then they focused on the only areas where they are losing and tried to force an idea of fraud. This is why judges all over the country are denying cases brought up by the Trump campaign.
Ask you this, specifically, what evidence is there either of irregularities? We've covered quite a few here, right? How many ballots could have been accepted beyond the actual election date? Something that's really suspicious, of course, is that mail-in ballots have been accepted at a rate of 30 times what they were accepted in 2016.
Yep, that was the point of, voting during a pandemic and the Democrats pushing forward mail-in ballots, mail-in voting. And Trump said, don't do it because there's fraud.
Allegheny County, their Board of Elections, they just said they had to count over 2,000 undated ballots. We personally on this show went through voter rolls in Michigan, Senator Cruz, and there
was a big story about that, how they denied votes that were not filled out correctly. They denied mail-in ballots that weren't filled out correctly, and they had a rush to get people to come in and fix their to reclaim their ballot and fix the mistakes.
Found obituaries of the people who voted. Now, I can't say that there are many thousands because I don't have the research crew, but we confirmed dozens.
Okay. Let's say someone who died did vote. Every vote is checked against the register in that state. It wasn't counted. Literally, if you bring up someone dead voted and it didn't count, then what is the fraud? There is no fraud there. Just because someone tried to vote or, send in a ballot from a dead person doesn't mean there was fraud involved.
Hard evidence is there of either irregularities or voter fraud. What do you plan to take into battle?
Well, Stephen, I'll tell you what evidence matters, and that is the evidence presented by the legal teams in court in the formal challenge. And
so he doesn't have any evidence. He just said, I'll tell you what evidence matters, the evidence that the legal teams have.
And here's how this operates. We had the election
total pivot
8 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
After the election, there have been multiple lawsuits filed across the country in multiple states challenging the results. Either calling for recounts, mandatory recounts, or contest litigation, other cases challenging the results. It's now incumbent on the Trump legal team to go and present their evidence, not on Twitter, not on YouTube or
literally William Barr, the Attorney General, said he is investigating specific cases of voter fraud based off of Twitter stories the other day.
TV, but to present it in a court of law. That means coming in with expert witnesses, coming in with statistical analysis, coming in with direct witnesses who can testify as to specific fraud and to quantify the case. And the way our legal system works, look, I got to say, it is hard and frustrating just as an informed citizen to know really what's going on. You watch Twitter, you see allegations all over the place.
Right.
It's not clear, is it zombies rising from the dead all voting?
On Twitter, you see allegations all over the place.
What's going on?
Right.
What matters is what they can prove in court.
Okay,
and the process we have to determine what the evidence is the legal adjudicatory function. And so there'll be cases in state court and federal court where the fact finders, either the jury or the judge, will listen to the evidence and conclude what the facts demonstrate. And then from there, if the Trump campaign is able to demonstrate that a sufficient number of votes were illegally cast, such that they should not be included, they may be able to flip some or all of the vote totals. But that's what it will take to change the result from where the tallies are right now.
So they aren't trying to catch fraud. We know that. They're trying to change the results of the election and stroke chaos as much as they can. We don't know if Trump is really serious about trying to win. Well, he might be, but the people around him might just be using this momentum for the Georgia race. They want to carry in the momentum from the presidency or the president's race to the Georgia race and also get fundraising from that. And Republicans don't want to lose the Trump voters, so they're going to ride with Trump until he collapses. They're going to pretend to be with him until he collapses and say behind closed doors they're not actually with Trump. Someone said if you trust the U.S. election process, that means you would have trusted Nazis. Was it a guy on the right? Because all the people I know on the right have, well, most of them who are like on the right, the far right, they have pictures like flags hanging up in their houses of Trump on Rambo's body with six-pack, with a RPG. These people are treating him as a deity. Like, this is literally like the cult of personality. This is literally, that's Hitler. That's the Hitler fascism, not freaking trusting election results in a democracy.
Where would you say Americans should look? What's the strongest point?
So, Stephen, the strongest point I would say is start at the beginning, which is wait and let the process play out. The legal process, these results are still being contested in court. And I'll give an example. So the media has now called it for Joe Biden. They want everyone to shut up, and they say if you dare disagree with their call, that you're somehow undermining democracy. Well, that's not actually the way our Constitution works. It's not the media that picks the president. It's the American people. It's the voters. And let me point to a very specific example, which is in the year 2000, Bush versus Gore. The media on election night called the election for Al Gore. I was working on the George W. Bush campaign. That's where I met Heidi, my wife. I remember that night. They said, Gore has won Florida. Al Gore is the next president.
Did you see Trump post that fake newspaper article? Trump newspaper, Gore, not for Gore. They made these fake newspaper articles with Gore being nominated. Yep, right here. Or not this. Oh shit, yeah, they took this paper and they photoshopped it to say President Gore. And they hung it up over a Trump campaign office. I'm not sure where I could find there it is. So they took that picture I just showed and made it President Gore to lie about the media calling it for Gore in 2000. Because they want to say, oh, the media called it in 2000 and then the results got flipped, which isn't the reality. They had to literally make a fake newspaper.
President of the United States, all sorts of red, white, and blue, ta-da, the media makes the call.
Right.
They just had one problem. The votes weren't there. As they counted the votes,
right.
George W. Bush had more votes in Florida than Al Gore. Now, they ended up retracting their call because they realized it was catastrophically wrong. And by the way, every network was catastrophically wrong.
And one thing, too, to be clear about that, a lot of Americans, because, because Kevin Costner made a movie on HBO, they don't know that recounts, there were recounts that went on, and then it just eventually had to halt it. Was it 37 days?
So it was 36 days, and there were a total of 4 recounts.
Actually, if they would have kept on going, Gore probably would have won, but he conceded too early.
Happened in Florida. So
right.
The Al Gore team came in. Every time the votes were counted, George W. Bush won every single recount. I was part of the legal team, and you and I have talked before on your show about my new book, One Vote Away.
Yes, One Vote
There's
Away.
There's an entire chapter on One Vote Away on Bush versus Gore. Oh, wow. So if you want to understand really what happens in a recount, what are the legal issues, how does this happen? If you want to understand what's going on right now,
right.
Go to Amazon and buy One Vote Away. It's actually been 5 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, which, as you know, drives them back.
Yeah, they really don't want you to be on the New York Times bestseller list. Like Chelsea Handler, can you write another book about drinking and sleeping with a lot of people? Please, whatever it takes to bump.
Oh, I'm muted. Can you find me one person mad about Ted Cruz being on the New York Times bestseller list?
Him off. Hardcover, softcover, nonfiction,
literally
digital.
Everyone is a
Give me
bestseller
something.
on New York
Let
Times.
me ask you this, because the difference between Florida and this, obviously, is there's one state, Florida. Now there are many, and really Florida comes down to too close to call, right? That's what it was. That's why we needed the recount. Nowhere near the kind of widespread irregularities, and I'm using my words carefully here. I would say there's some indications of outright misleading voting practices that you could see in some precincts, but voting irregularities, there wasn't this in Florida. So now that we're looking at a multi-pronged approach, what should the rollout plan be? Does there need to be a priority on one specific state? Is maybe Georgia the right place to try and put all hands on deck since the Secretary of State is starting now? He started the process with a manual recount.
Look, Georgia is a hugely important fight, not just for the presidential, but we've got
Runoffs.
2 Senate seats, a runoff on January 5th that is going to decide control of the Senate. And so those
Republicans
Senate
are good at politics
elections,
because they don't stop.
it is hard to think of such an epically important election as this January 5th election, because the difference between a Chuck Schumer Senate that will unleash the...
Oh yeah, Chuck Schumer won again for leadership. By the way, if you go to a concert, or if you want to go to a concert, and this will happen with a lot of things. So even if the government doesn't require COVID-19 for certain things, like if they don't, if the government doesn't say, your kid has to have it before going to school, I think that might actually happen. Like, first, corporations are going to do it. Like, if you want to go to an NBA game or a concert, or if you want to go to college and live on campus, they're going to say, hey, you have to be vaccinated for COVID-19 first. Or, like, if you want to send your kid to school right now, there's a lot of rules in certain districts in certain states where a kid has to be, vaccinated before he can go to be in public school. So, like, what if, Walmart or something, you have to be certified, vaccinated from COVID? I don't know about that. I don't want to take the first vaccine. They're going to rush out the door. But, I don't think I'll have a choice at one point. There'll be, like, so many gatekeep rules to certain aspects of society that you'll need to have a COVID vaccine in order to, like, go and do it.
Crazies on the far left versus a Republican Senate that will shut down the most damaging ideas of the far left. It's dramatic.
Yeah.
But set aside Georgia for a second. Let me take your broader question. Where we are right now, let me give you good news and bad news. The good news is one reason to have
Wait, hold on a second. You didn't ask me if I want the good news first or the bad news first. My doctor usually does that. He says, you want the good news first or the bad news first? And then he tells me about my cholesterol and how I have a fat ass, and that's the good news. So
all right, I'll give you bean first, and then I'll amputate.
Okay, all right, good.
The good news.
Okay.
If you look at in this COVID strange election cycle, the ballots cast in person on election day, Trump won the significant majority of those ballots.
Right.
The early ballots cast by mail, Biden won the significant majority of those.
Sure.
Yeah.
If you look historically at election recounts or election contests, in-person ballots tend to be pretty reliable. There's less opportunity for mischief with in-person voting. So typically, the votes count on election day.
So everyone who voted by mail should have their
Where
rights
you
thrown
see
away,
in recounts and contests votes being discarded as being illegal, as contrary to law,
right,
are usually early votes and mail-in votes, which means there's some reason to expect, as these ballots are examined more closely, that some meaningful percentage of the early mail-in votes will be discarded as contrary to law, which means more Biden votes are likely to go away than Trump votes. So that's good news that we could see these totals shrinking.
Right.
The bad news you referred to is twofold. Number one, some of these margins are pretty big. In Pennsylvania, it's 45,000 votes. Look, Bush versus Gore in Florida, we had a couple thousand votes.
Right.
45,000 is a lot of votes. In Michigan, it's 130,000 votes is Biden's lead.
Right.
Those are big vote totals. Because to prevail, you've got to demonstrate in the court that many ballots are illegally cast, and you can't just make generalities. It has to be specifically proven up. Here's also what makes it challenging. To win, to flip the outcome, the Trump legal team has to run the table. They can't just win in one state. They can't just win in Pennsylvania. They can't just win in Georgia. They've got to win in multiple states. And so that becomes harder because Biden has a lead in several of these states, from Georgia to Arizona to Michigan to Pennsylvania to Nevada. And to get to 270
so Trump has to run the table with
Trump has to win not just once, and winning once is not easy, but he's got to win multiple times.
Yeah, throw out all the military votes and all the old people votes and all the student votes, real cool. People who are overseas, throw them out. So, so Joe Biden loses.
Right.
And so my advice
to
everyone is
pretty much,
calm down and relax
subjective.
And let the process play out. That doesn't mean pop the champagne and celebrate that Trump's going to win. We need to let the process play out and see what happens. But don't also accept what the media is saying, which is don't even bother with the litigation. We say it's over, so you must think it's over.
Watch Good Morning Mug Club.
Dumb. Here's a little document posted to Twitter of House results. So people who supported M4A, if you said no, you are more likely to lose. But it's hard to evaluate these things because each race is really so different. The demographics in each district and each state are very varied. In another continent or whatever, like Europe, each state would be a different country, ideally. We have a bunch of different mini countries together under one union in the United States. But AOC won by 38 points. Ayanna Pressley won by 74 points. Holy shit. These are really safe districts. So Cori Bush, Ilhan Omar, they all won the races. All the squad won their races so deeply. Like 40 points to 70 points they won by. Which really shows in the safer blue districts, people are more willing to go socially democratic. And it really helps my argument that getting Trump out of office was a good thing, because when people are faced with like fascism or the threat of a Republican, they will go to the center. But if they are in a safe blue district, and Jamal Bowman won by 66, if they're in a safe district, they're more likely to try out some more socialist policies, more left policies. I like this. This is classy. Yeah, drop me the graphic. I love these comments. How do I get this on here? Oh. Listen, all you dumbasses. Common sense. He's just pointing out the corruption of both of these parties. Yes, they both have corruption. My argument for Jimmy Dore is he presents it in a dumb way that doesn't help us get votes. That's my whole argument. Almost a moment of self-realization when he mentions asshole political commentators. Amazing. Jimmy is correct, though. We had a left during Obama, but he crushed it. If you cannot tell the difference between the left we have now versus the left we had with Obama, then you're oh my god, you have to do a big reevaluation of what the hell is going on in the world, because you aren't seeing reality. If you think the left now is the same as back when Obama was there, if you think Occupy Wall Street was even something like influence-wise in comparison to this. I love reading the comments. It's fun. Oh, so here is where this woman is. I had the idea that she was at MSNBC. Well, one step closer, I guess. Ha ha ha. Being, strategic politically is so, like, toxic to some people on the left. Like, the concept is so, like, oh, how dare you. Discord, you have it in? Cool. Yeah, well, Katie Porter. Oh, and that's when they first won. Okay, district leaning. I have to read up on Katie Porter's district because she's the one outlier of someone who's progressive, but she is, like, still accepted by moderate voters very heavily. You can only push the Dems to the left if they're in charge. Yeah. Trump made people crash to the center, but people who watch my videos don't engage with those thoughts. They just think both sides are bad. If we're not being 100% pure and principled, we are not doing good. And I'm like, but you have to get votes and wage political power. No, we have to be principled, they tell me. We have to be Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi, who, after doing the Jimmy Dore strategy in the primaries, her approval rating dropped to like 20%. Her favorability rating. She became the least favorable Democratic candidate after she went after Kamala in the way she did. If you attack a popular person, even if your attacks are legitimate, you might lose some influence. It's just the reality. It sucks, but it's what we're faced with. You have to really do it in a really substantive way, because you shouldn't trade purity for progress, or trade progress for purity. And progress has to be done through, electoral strategies. It's because politics become your personality, so strategy feels like a personal attack. Yeah. I might have said that too a year ago. Like, oh, you want to be nice to Obama after he's a war criminal? How dare you? But if you actually say that to somebody, then just wish your progressive policies goodbye. Unless if you think there are 80 million Green Party members out there ready to just join in the fray. The Green Party literally got a little bit over 300,000 votes this election. That's probably the worst turnout I could imagine. It's kind of sad. Yeah, it'll get us loaded into cattle cars. We cannot be complacent. Or try to shove... Yeah, theory. Go read theory, guys. I hate that so much. I'm not going to read theory for anything other than fun and, intellectual exercise. And for school, I had to read some angles. And yeah, Ro Khanna. Like, Andrew Yang. People who hate him, I don't think they have a good case for it. Because he was, he's... It's like, I could put him in the same category a little bit. I know Destiny's really cringy, and he's toxic to the left purposely, because that's his thing. But people like that will vote for a progressive once they get elected, and they will fiercely advocate for them once they become the nominee. And like David Pakman, all these people that lefties would consider liberals. Most would consider me a liberal, because I don't say I'm like a socialist or anything. I don't say I'm a capitalist. I kind of just do things without any type of labels guiding me. Yeah, seeing what the foundation of the ideology is. But even if they read historical accounts, they don't understand. Like, following the path of the KDP in 1928 or whatever, when they said it was a social fascism or whatever, that's just as bad as fascism, so they're not going to engage in electoralism at all, in the political process at all, and that got them killed. Like, what's more important, reading theory or knowing the historical account as well of what actually happened before? I think it's more important to study what happened in history than it does for, like, theory. Then you see freaking Nico House siding with the Nazis and not seeing why there's a problem with it.
Think about it. The same people who told us you could trust the Steele dossier are now telling us you can trust the results of this election. The same people who told us you could trust the whistleblower in the impeachment hearings. Remember, the anonymous whistleblower with no firsthand knowledge, bias against the president, who worked for Joe Biden. You can trust him. They said that. Now they're saying you can trust the results of this election. And I think people in Pennsylvania and people...
You can run this game for anything. Like the guy who told you that he thought you were looking good that day, but he actually thought you were looking ugly. That same person said that water is wet. Water is definitely not wet.
Across the country, the 72 million that Mr. Turley just mentioned, they know something doesn't feel right here. Our president got 9 million more votes this time than he did 4 years ago, and yet he comes up short, even though we gained seats in the House of Representatives. Something doesn't feel right, and that's why we got to do what Joe Biden said. Let's go all the way until...
Yeah, the Democrats went through all the effort to rig the election, only at the point of the presidency. All down ballot races, they just gave up on. You know, the great rigging job. Apparently, either a bunch of people handed in ballots with only Joe Biden's name on it, or they voted Joe Biden at the top of the ticket and then voted Republican on the way down. This is so illogical. I do know a lot of Republicans, actually, a good amount, that voted Biden top of the ticket and went straight Republican after.
This is independently verified. Sean, this is real simple. Follow the process that Reince laid out. Follow the law, as Greg just talked about. How about we follow the Constitution? The Electoral College doesn't meet till December 14th.
The Constitution says to throw out all the votes.
There is time to make sure this
and
was...
it says to restrict the polling places for black people. I mean, that is basically given in the Constitution.
Done right, that we have integrity in our election. So we get the legal cases in place, get everything in place, but follow the process. That's who we are as Americans, a nation where we have the rule of law and a constitution. Let's follow that. And as Greg indicated, that's good for everybody. And if in fact
people followed the exact rules to get their mail-in votes cast, but you want to remove them because you said there are not enough election observers.
Joe Biden's the winner, that's good for him too. So let's follow that process and understand.
Yeah, we should be focusing on, revealing unfiltered history. Other than focusing on, like, reading friggin' theory or whatever. Like, find out what the whitewashed version of history, like, what's wrong about that, and find out the truth of it. And we could do this through, like, religion, too. I think that could yield some interesting information if people were more versed on the history of religions and how those developed because of how much power that has today with all the Zionists and all that.
And that the Democrats, these same people who told us you could trust other things, the Steele dossier, the anonymous whistleblower, are now telling us you can trust this vote total and these election results.
The same people who said you could eat toast with butter said that you could also... I don't even know. That's such a stupid point.
That's the concern Americans have.
Jesus,
think about it. The same people who told us you could trust...
Don't you love Nazis? Make voter suppression a federal crime. That'd be cool. Ooh, I gotta go watch this Vosh David Pakman interview then. Alright, that was an hour for tonight. I took a muscle relaxer. I'm gonna pass out. Good night. Thanks for hanging out. I'm gonna have a guy on the channel in the next couple days to talk about different things, like what we were just talking about. Yeah, this muscle relaxer, I think I took too much. My whole body feels like a hot tub.